Welcome to the deep dive. You know that feeling when you check the news and it feels like every single headline is a five-alarm fire all happening at once?
Absolutely. That is exactly the stack of sources we're looking at today.
We are tracking this just incredibly fast stream of world events, a horrifying security incident in Australia, a massive environmental and infrastructure crisis in India.
And then you have these huge corporate shifts that are shaking up everything from auto manufacturing in Detroit to the big IT firms in Bangalore.
It really is signal overload. You've got, geopolitical moves between Russia and India happening at the same time, and air quality disaster is shutting down schools.
All of it set against this backdrop of billion-dollar lawsuits
Yeah.
and huge corporate write-offs. I mean, if you look at these sources separately, they seem so disconnected.
But they're not.
They're not. They tell a single kind of frightening story about how interconnected and vulnerable everything is right now.
So our mission today is not just to read you the headlines, it's to synthesize them. We need to take this global snapshot from Bondi Beach to Silicon Valley and find the patterns.
The connections between the tragedy, the policy, and the market chaos.
Exactly. We're looking for the insights that stick with you long after the breaking news ticker moves on.
So we've broken this deep dive into three main areas. First, we'll get into the global security and geopolitical shockwaves.
Then we'll dive into the severe domestic pressure points hitting India. We're talking environment, infrastructure, policy.
And finally, we'll look at the critical economic and corporate landscape and the shifts that are really redefining how global trade and labor work.
Okay, let's get into it. And we have to start with this truly tragic event that has just shaken Australia's sense of security.
Mass shooting at Bondi Beach.
Yeah, which happened during Hanukkah, a Jewish holiday celebration.
And the sources call this Australia's worst mass shooting in almost 30 years. To really get the gravity of it, you have to look at the victims.
It's just devastating.
Of the 15 people killed, one detail. It just stands out. An 87-year-old man, Alex Kleitman, a Holocaust survivor who died shielding his wife from the gunfire.
Gosh, that detail alone, the dark history of the 20th century colliding with this modern tragedy.
Yeah, it's just brutal. And among the other victims were a 10-year-old girl and a British-born rabbi.
It really underscores the kind of vulnerability we're talking about today. And what we know about the attackers just confirms this isn't some isolated incident.
Not at all. The investigation found homemade ISIS flags in the alleged gunman's car, and they had reportedly traveled to the Philippines just the month before.
So it's a direct line from global ideology to domestic terror.
Exactly. And the response was immediate. You had UN Secretary General Guterres condemning it, and the Australian Prime Minister Albanese vowing tougher gun laws.
Okay, so while that global violence is flaring up, let's track the political friction playing out in U.S. courtrooms, starting with this massive lawsuit.
Donald Trump is suing the BBC.
And the number is huge.
The sources are saying it's for $10 billion. It's broken down into $5 billion for alleged defamation and another $5 billion under Florida's Deceptive and Unfair Trade Practices Act.
And this is all over an edit of a speech he gave on January 6th.
Correct.
That second part, the unfair trade practices claim, that feels like a new strategy. It's incredibly aggressive.
It is. It's designed to maximize the financial pressure. And moving from the courts to policy, the Trump administration also signed an executive order classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
That's a huge escalation in language. From a political standpoint, what does classifying an opioid as a WMD actually? What does it unlock for the government?
It's really about jurisdiction and mobilization. It lets federal agencies that normally focus on counterterrorism, like the Department of Defense, Homeland Security.
The ones that deal with nuclear, biological, chemical threats.
Exactly. It lets them bring all of those resources and protocols to the fentanyl crisis. It changes the whole game. It's not a crime issue anymore. It's an acute national security threat.
That is a major shift. And, staying in the U.S., we also saw this incredibly sad story out of Hollywood.
The death of director Rob Reiner and his wife.
Yeah, and the arrest of their son, Nick Reiner, on suspicion of murder.
And what was so telling was how quickly that private tragedy was consumed by politics. Trump, who was a big critic of Rob Reiner, publicly called the director tortured and struggling right after he died.
It's just another example of how even the most personal tragedies get pulled into the political news cycle and, weaponized. Okay, let's zoom out a bit from the U.S. and look at these bigger geopolitical alignments that are hardening. We saw Russia's Vladimir Putin sign a law ratifying a military logistics pact with India.
ROLOS.
Right, RODOS. It stands for Reciprocal Exchange of Logistics Agreement. And it's a big deal because it lets both militaries use each other's ports and air bases for things like fuel, repairs, support.
So for India to be cementing this relationship with Russia right now, despite all the Western pressure over Ukraine, it just shows how critical it is for them to maintain their military readiness and their access to Russian hardware. It's pure pragmatism.
That pragmatism provides such a jarring contrast to India's rhetoric toward its neighbor, Pakistan.
Oh, absolutely. On that front, India is maintaining a very hard line. The sources say they're slamming Pakistan, calling it the global epicenter of terror.
And firmly rejecting any idea of a dispute over Jammu and Kashmir.
It shows that even as India is maneuvering on the global stage with powers like Russia, those regional tensions are still at a boiling point.
And a final, devastating reminder of the human cost of all this instability.
The 6 Bangladeshi peacekeepers laid to rest after a drone attack on a UN base in Sudan.
It just brings it all home. These aren't just policy debates. These are real people in real danger trying to hold things together.
And speaking of pressure, that strength India projects on the world stage is in such stark contrast to the massive domestic crises the country is facing right now.
A perfect pivot. Let's shift our deep dive there to the issues gripping India.
And we have to start with the apocalypse in Delhi.
Right, which has become this horrible annual event, but this year seems especially bad. The sources say Delhi woke up to an air quality index, an AQI of 381.
And we have to be clear about what 381 actually means. That is almost 4 times the level that's considered safe. It's severe.
It's not just an inconvenience, it's a full-blown public health emergency.
Absolutely. At that level, it's affecting healthy people and seriously harming anyone with existing conditions.
And the immediate impacts are they're so disruptive. The government told schools to move kids in class 5 and below to online learning.
And it goes beyond just health. It's crippling travel. Indigo, Delhi Airport, they're all issuing advisories because the smog and fog are so dense. Huge delays.
This creates this intense public frustration. We saw that bizarre story of spectators chanting AQI, AQI at the chief minister during a Lionel Messi event.
It's this spontaneous, visceral protest. The very atmosphere becomes a tool for political discontent.
And that environmental chaos, the fog, it leads directly to these acute safety failures.
Like the multi-vehicle collision on the Delhi-Agra Expressway. Several buses and cars.
A tragic story.
A devastating one. Eyewitnesses said the buses just burst into flames on impact because of the low visibility. We have 4 confirmed deaths, 25 injured, and they fear the number could be higher.
It's that direct link. When you can't see the road, the chronic problem of air quality becomes an immediate, deadly safety crisis.
And then there's the policy turbulence.
Yes, this major fight over the center's new VBG-RAMG bill, which is supposed to replace the massive rural employment scheme, MGNREGA.
So for anyone who doesn't follow Indian policy, MGNREGA is a huge social safety net. It guarantees 100 days of paid work to rural households.
It's a lifeline for millions.
It is. And this new bill has sparked a huge controversy over 2 main things. First, the name itself is drawing political fire.
But second, and this is the really big one, it pushes 40% of the funding burden onto the states.
That is a massive shift. MGNREGA was centrally funded, shifting 40% of the cost onto state governments, some of which are already broke. It raises serious questions about whether this program can even survive.
It politicizes a safety net that was designed to be national.
Exactly.
And then there was that very visible, very personal social controversy.
The video of Nitish Kumar pulling down a woman doctor's hijab.
At a public event, right after handing her an appointment letter, the outrage was immediate.
Widespread condemnation. I mean, regardless of the motive, for a high-ranking official to do that in public, it's seen as just this unacceptable violation of religious freedom and personal dignity.
Okay, so we've hit geopolitical shocks, domestic chaos, human tragedy. Let's pivot now to the world of corporate and market shifts.
Because U.S. policy decisions are creating these huge waves across the globe in manufacturing and IT.
And it's fascinating how regulatory pressure is changing leadership. In Australia, the CEO of Star Entertainment, Steve McCann, is stepping down.
Right, after a really turbulent time. The company has been under intense scrutiny over financial issues and mainly money laundering allegations.
He's staying until 2026, which is a long transition, but the new chair is already taking on extra duties.
Which tells you they're under immediate pressure from regulators and investors to show they have things under control.
Okay, now let's jump to Detroit. Because U.S. policy is hitting global manufacturing hard. Ford is making a huge retreat from electric vehicles.
A huge retreat. They're taking a $19.5 billion charge. This isn't a minor adjustment. It's a complete strategic reversal.
And they specifically cited policies from the Trump era as, quote, gripping the industry. How does that work? How does a political environment force a nearly $20 billion charge?
It's all about regulatory uncertainty. Ford made huge long-term bets on EVs based on expecting certain subsidies, certain trade agreements.
And now those are in question.
Exactly. If potential tariffs on key parts or the removal of consumer tax credits suddenly threaten that model, the whole long-term profit plan just collapses. That $19.5 billion is the company admitting on paper that their factories and supply contracts are suddenly worth dramatically less.
Because the political landscape changed the math.
It changed the entire equation.
And that same political influence stretches right into the tech sector.
It does. Trump's potential policies, especially that proposed $100,000 fee for H-1B workers, that's expected to hit Indian IT giants like Tata and Infosys the hardest.
$100,000 per worker, that would completely destroy their business model, wouldn't it?
It would fundamentally change it. Their model often relies on sending large numbers of skilled workers to the U.S. on H-1B visas. A fee that high makes it prohibitively expensive.
And it's not just the fee. We're also seeing reports that H-1B and H-4 visas are being prudentially revoked because of interview delays in India.
Prudentially revoked is such a bureaucratic term. It basically means the government is pausing or pulling back approvals out of caution or because of administrative backlogs.
But the result for the IT sector is just massive uncertainty.
Total uncertainty. You can't plan projects. You can't move key talent. It paralyzes the entire outsourcing ecosystem.
But despite all these global headwinds, let's take a quick look at the Indian markets themselves because there are still signs of health.
For sure. The ICICI Prudential AMC IPO just closed. It was subscribed over 2 times.
And the key there was strong participation from QIs, right, the qualified institutional buyers.
Exactly. The big banks, the mutual funds, the big money is still bullish. The gray market premium is around 13%, which suggests a healthy listing.
And in banking, HDFC got approval to acquire up to a 9.5% stake in IndusInd Bank. So continued consolidation.
Right. And we also got RBI data that showed a, quote, rosy picture for pull-bound Tamil Nadu, while also revealing some economic gaps in Karnataka.
And really quickly, a snapshot of the sports business, which is enormous in India. The IPL 2026 schedule is set.
March 26 to May 31. And what's notable is that it's going to overlap with the Pakistan Super League for the 2nd year in a row.
Which signals that continued tension in the global cricket calendar.
It does. Especially with the auction happening today in Abu Dhabi.
Isn't that an incredible amount of ground we've covered? I mean, we started with global violence in Australia, the death of a Holocaust survivor.
Transition through these massive policy shifts affecting Ford's EV plans and the entire H-1B visa program.
And landed on these chronic system failures, like Delhi's air quality crisis.
The key takeaway for me is the convergence. These aren't separate crises. The geopolitical uncertainty that pushes Russia and India together is related to the same instability that makes Ford pull back on a $20 billion bet.
It's all connected.
Global ideological threats are colliding with protectionist economics and internal systems that are just collapsing.
So the knowledge from today gives you this vital perspective. We are not dealing with a bunch of isolated events. We're dealing with a highly pressurized, interconnected global system that is failing on multiple fronts at the same time.
Absolutely. So this leaves me with a final thought for you to chew on. Given this rapid-fire succession of crises we've just seen, from new geopolitical pacts like India, Russia, to major corporate retreats like Ford abandoning EVs, to the friction over a $100,000 immigration fee, how quickly will these short-term headlines fundamentally reshape our long-term world?
What's the permanent change?
Exactly. What are the irreversible changes being locked in right now in areas like international immigration rules and global environmental health standards? That's something you should keep mulling over this week.
Yeah, a truly provocative question to explore as you process this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.